So, welcome in, guys. Hey, it's been a while since we've done one of these. It's because, well, it's been 2 years, during pandemic times. So we're all too busy surviving, living our own lives. So I just want to say hi, everybody, coming on to this episode again. Thanks for clicking in and tuning in and watching. I wasn't gonna do one of these again because I personally feel like I'm done talking about this topic. I've done 2 videos on this topic, about the state of Kung Fu and stuff like that. And I'm sure not many people out there want to hear me talk about it because everybody's focused on training. Everybody's focused on fighting. Everybody's focused on doing MMA. They don't want to hear about, some obscure esoteric type stuff that they don't understand. They don't want to hear me talk about Kung Fu. So anyway, we have Howard here who reached out to me via social media. He really wanted to talk more about this topic. And at first I was a little, hesitant. I was like, okay, I don't want to be overly negative. I don't want to say the same things that I've said before, right? It's just regurgitation of what we already know. But however, with that said, Howard actually came to me and has some interesting insights. He has some interesting knowledge. He has some interesting ideas, an interesting perspective. So I want him to be able to share that with you. So I'm just going to let him introduce himself and talk. And I will just try to not talk unless it's something very important. I'm just going to let Howard do his thing. Okay, please let our audience know who you are.
Thank you very much, Hoi. It's a real pleasure to be on your podcast. And so my name's Howard Bland, and I run a Kung Fu school here in Southern Africa, in the country of Zambia. I'm a dual citizen between here and Britain. Love Wing Chun, love Jeet Kune Do, love traditional Chinese martial arts, Hung Gar as well, same as you. And I think the point we were talking about is, for me, it was the negative reaction you're getting on a Wing Chun traditional forum, which has over 75,000 members. And it's sort of a habit I'm seeing. It's a pattern, I should say, where anyone who posts Wing Chun in a sparring context is accused of not being real Wing Chun. And I think that's, BS, basically. And I know you do too.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of elaborate on that. I mean, maybe you could tell us your martial arts experience too, if you want to. If not, that's okay too. But let me just reply to that. And yeah, I kind of touched on this in the other video I did, which was my love-hate relationship with Chinese martial arts. And to sum up that 20-minute video in just a few moments here, if you're new to this and you're just joining us today. What I find funny, right? I find hilarious, right? I find just absolutely hilarious, is that you get a guy like me who does all the martial arts, right? Like, it's not like it's some kind of secret, okay? I do boxing, I do Muay Thai, kickboxing, okay? I do wrestling, I do jiu-jitsu. I have a karate, background. I have a taekwondo background, black belts in both. I started doing the Kung Fu about 2 years ago, okay? Started with Wing Chun first, went back to Hong Kong, picked up the Hung Gar, continuing to do that. I'm on like my, 7th or 8th style at this point, okay? It's not like, you know what I mean? Like, to me, it's like, I've seen a lot already. And I'm not saying, like, I don't want to be egotistical, and I don't want to say like, hey, I could beat your Sifu, or I could beat your teacher, or I could beat your whatever. But, if we were in a private conversation, if it wasn't public and we were just in a room together and I was just talking one-on-one with somebody, yeah, the reality is I could probably just beat all the teachers that you guys quote unquote worship and whatever, right? Not because I'm any good.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's because I'm great. It's because the reality is most of these teachers, they don't spar, they don't fight, right? So you get even an average, and I'm talking about, you just get an average kickboxer off the street that has maybe 2 or 3 amateur fights. even that guy, right, can beat, your average kung fu teacher in a sparring match or in a fight, simply because the kung fu teachers and stuff like that, they don't fight. Now, I'm not saying that's every single one of them. Okay, I don't want to say that. I know that there's a good number of people that, hey, really legit, really high level skill, stuff like that. My own kung fu teachers, included as a part of that, right? But I'm saying like 90%, right? 95%, your average kung fu teacher teaching at the strip mall or whatever it is, right? That is not a sign of quality. I'm talking about on average, okay? And people are going to say, well, you're generalizing. People are going to say things like, well, not at our school. We spar at our school and stuff like that. Like, everybody's going to say that, right? But from my perspective, it's like, okay, if that was true, if you were remotely being honest, if you were being remotely honest with yourself, if everyone came up to me and said, no, that's not true, we spar at our school, well, if that's the case, we wouldn't have this problem. We wouldn't have this discussion where anytime you guys enter a tournament or you guys enter a fight or whatever, you guys lose. That shouldn't be the case then. If every single person that I talk to and they're like, oh no, we spar in our kung fu school, blah blah blah, then you would be winning. You would be winning your Sanda championships. You would be winning your Muay Thai championships. You would be entering the boxing ring and you'd be outboxing boxers and stuff like that. That's not happening. So basically, just don't lie. Stop being dishonest with yourself. Anyway, going back to what I was saying was, like, to me, it's just funny because I'm like, hey, I've competed for so many years now, fought so many times. I don't want to say, hey, I fought over 30 times or, I've done this for over 20 years or whatever it is. I don't want to say those kinds of things because it makes me sound, like a know-it-all, or makes me sound like a egotistical person or whatever. All I'll say is I have enough fighting experience to know whether something is real and something's not real. And I have enough fighting experience. You could just check my other videos and stuff like that if you want to, right? Anybody that's watching this for the first time, they're like, oh, yes, I don't know who you are. Yeah, go ahead. Just go on my channel, check my sparring, check my fight clips and whatever, right? So anyway, I'm not a professional fighter, never wanted to be one. So I just want to make this clear. I'm not a professional fighter, never wanted to be a professional fighter. I have other things that I enjoy doing. I like making art. I like making whatever, clothing. I like I like making little films here and there. I'm an artist. I like to do all these kinds of things, and martial arts just happens to be a big part of my life. But that doesn't mean I stop training. That doesn't mean I stop competing. I still train. I still compete. I just had a fight in the summer in Hong Kong. Anyways, I won't stop competing. Yes. I won't stop fighting. Right? I'll continue to do so. My point being is that when I'm on these forums, and sometimes I'll share some clips, sometimes I'll share some points, and these people, say things and they react the way they react. And to me, it's just funny because I could see through all that. Right? They make these excuses and these reactions and stuff, and I'm like, well, I can see through all that. Just keep talking because I know exactly who exposes themselves and who doesn't. Anyway, I'll let you add to that.
Well, I mean, all I can add to that is this is the point where I'm supposed to say, oh, but the old argument, oh Hoi, but there's sparring, resistive training, and then there's Wing Chun, which is meant for the streets. You see, they're two different worlds, and one can't be trained and they can't be cross-trained. We've got to get away from that, because actually, if there is one point I would make here that may add to this conversation you've already had, it's that we don't actually, you see, the original argument, or the argument that's going around is this. This is why you post on a traditional Wing Chun forum with thousands of members, and there's still the zeitgeist in Wing Chun right now. And the zeitgeist is this, that, we know exactly what Wing Chun is in a combative format without pressure testing it. On its face, it doesn't make any sense. You look at Sambo, you look at Jiu-Jitsu, you look at Karate, you look at Judo, you look at a lot of traditional martial arts who have had their baptism under fire during the 80s and the 90s, up to the 2000s. Wing Chun has resisted this, but still wants to claim it has combative truth. Now, you were talking earlier about doing your Hungar videos, performance, art, fight choreography. You don't mistake for the wood for the trees when you do that. You understand that is not combative. That's the difference. Now, these guys are doing the same pantomime in thin air, but they're saying it's still combative. Now, that is illogical. That's the only point I want to make it. And it's nothing new. It's the same point Bruce Lee made. He saw the wood for the trees when he sparred with Wong Jack Man in 1965, used his Wing Chun as it was supposed to be expressed classically. And I'll explain why I'm doing this in a moment, speech marks. And found it was, you know, crap. It didn't work, and he was out of breath and all of that. And then at the end of the day, he decided you've got to hack away at the inessentials and find the way towards what was Wing Chun supposed to be combatively. If we assume that history is correct, going back to the 1700s, the 18th century, the Qing Dynasty of China, that when Wing Chun, its original founders, because there's no documentation on this, okay? Documentation in Wing Chun is almost non-existent. Most of it comes from the Ip Man period. We assume that Wing Chun actually was originally designed under a combative context and pressure tested. All right. Now, if that's the case, who can really claim, watching your video, that what you're doing, Hoi, is not really Wing Chun when you do this move, or you do a bong sao this way, or you apply a Wing Chun technique in that way? That's not really classical traditional Wing Chun. That's just modified Wing Chun under an MMA. You've modified it with kickboxing, MMA, and other styles. Here's my point. What if they're wrong? Because we don't actually know what Wing Chun looks like in combat, okay? Because we've had years and generations of practicing the Sil Nim Tao, the Chum Kyu, the Bilji form, the three forms after Ip Man. And I understand there's many forms and many lineages, not just Ip Man. But we're not practicing it with pressure testing. So this is the analogy I was using. It's the same thing as a golfer practicing golf, home alone in their bedroom without a golf ball. If you do that your whole life, how would you even know when watching a real game of golf with real golfers going against real opponents on a real course, what real golf is supposed to look like when applied? So how do you know what Wing Chun looks like combatively? Maybe the way Hoi's doing it in that sparring or in that match is the way the founders intended 300 years ago. You've just lost that meaning through years of doing what I call air chun, or doing it against a wooden man, and so forth.
I'll add to that.
All I'm changing in this, yeah.
Sorry, save your thought real quick. I'll just add to that real quick, is that the forms are there. The forms are there for information purposes. Anybody that trains traditional martial arts knows this. I just want to give some context to the guys that don't train traditional martial arts. They just train MMA or whatever, or jiu-jitsu, right? They don't understand what the forms are supposed to be. So in defense of the forms, forms are supposed to be the information that gets passed down from generation to generation. The forms are a static book. It's a book. You open it, the knowledge is there. But just because it's a book, it doesn't mean the words jump out of that book and all of a sudden do your fighting for you, okay? The form is supposed to teach you the principles, how to move your body, how to train your body, how to condition your body, but how you then apply the form is up to the person. And I'll stop there, because then, you know, you're going to get into a 1 hour conversation on that. So now back to you.
But that is actually the core, and we could end this conversation in 5 minutes right now, because what you said is dead on. Because if you look at kata in karate, for example, the way you apply kata in karate, okay, is the way you do apply it combatively. That's very true. That's why people who do very good at kata, look at GSP in the UFC. He does kata all the time, and that is really training what the mechanics he needs to train to apply it combatively. Okay, shadow boxing. You can, when I say air chun, I'm not having a go at people who practice things, you know, without a partner. Okay, I'm saying you're mistaking the wood for the trees. You're saying because you're doing it in the air, that's the way you'd actually do it in application. Now, in different styles, yes, like boxing, the way you snap out a jab or bob and weave, it's got direct application. A guy can go to prison for 2 years and alone in his cell just shadow box and come out and actually be pretty decent on the amateur circuit if he's trained well alone. But Wing Chun, because of the way Chinese forms are, okay, what you said about it actually being a mode of transference, an encyclopedia, a storage unit, but not actually how the techniques are supposed to be expressed. And let me point something out, and I'm not selling anything here. This is a book by Suki Wan. Okay, I'm not selling anything here, but he mentions in his book, right? And Suki Wan is an Englishman of Chinese heritage in the UK, a Wing Chun teacher I greatly admire. Okay, now I first came across this from him, and in his book, I'll just quote him directly. He says this, and this will be brief, about 30 seconds. Wing Chun was born when China was still in a tumultuous period. China was under Qing rule, a dynasty governed by the minority Manchus. As a result, pockets of secret underground factions were formed in the united hope of restoring power back to the Han Chinese majority. Okay, so there's the historical context. So what? Members within these secret societies, so these are political underground rebels basically, with combat experience would inevitably have used their knowledge to train other members within their respective groups. Fair enough. As a result, many of these secret societies became breeding grounds for Kung Fu development, with Wing Chun being just one of many. Now, the collective goal and hope would have been to develop a combat system superior to the ones used by the armies of the ruling Manchus, right? Now, here's the important and last part of this. Under such conditions, the forefathers of Wing Chun would have needed an effective means of training covertly. But more importantly, they would have needed a secure means of transferring their combat knowledge to other society members. Key words again there are covert and secure. Now, if you practice truly the way that the Wing Chun, bridging hand expressions and everything else was supposed to be shown combatively, that's not very secure, that's not very safe. But if you just do it standing still in encyclopedic format, your Bong Sao, your Tan Sao, your Fuk Sao, your Wang Jun, your Lan Sao, let's think about the Lan Sao for a moment, okay? Does anyone apply it like this? They train it like this in Sil Nim Tao. Let's think about Sut Sao, when you spread your arms here. And I shit you not, Hoi, but there are Wing Chun teachers out there, you say, excuse me, what does this mean? From the Sil Nim Tao, and they'll say, oh, that's when two attackers come behind you and you chop their necks. Okay. Like Fist of Fury, the double back fist, Bruce Lee. Yeah. But that's the problem, and that's even mainstream. Think about everything that Suki Wan was talking about there, okay, the literature there. What you're talking about, the forms are showing hidden information. It's just a mode of transference. You rely on the teachers to show you what this represents. Okay, it's whispers going on through generations, right? All they need to do is show this, and it's a reminder, this is referring to the Sut Sao neck strike or whatever. This, oh, it's referring to the Lan Sao closing hand. Here's something else. Bruce Lee, right? He developed his own form called Ong Moon for his Jeet Kune Do after the Wong Jack Man fight. And he was tired of expressing things covertly and secretly. So he took that, and then he does his punch over, punch under, punch over, the other one. Sorry for this little demo on the video. But he was trying to take Wing Chun, if you look up Ong Moon clips on YouTube, and say, no, let's show the combative application of the Wing Chun units, okay? But here's the thing, for a 300-year-old system, no one can take Sil Nim Tao, and let's talk about one member, but not by name, on the Wing Chun forum group, right? We'll just call him K. He has a video called The 3 Seeds of Wing Chun, and in it, he does his Zhong Sao, and he talks about expressing his Zhong Sao, right, in the way the form expresses it. But if we can establish historically that the way the form expresses it was not meant to be the way you apply it in real combat, then it's Wimplo from Kung Pao being trained wrong and doesn't know it because he refuses to pressure test. You have to pressure test it, and because of the nature of Wing Chun and the lost history, the only way to learn Wing Chun now, and this is to learn the classical, not to modify it with kickboxing or today's stuff, but to learn the real traditional classical Wing Chun, Kung Fu that's supposed to be done, you have to reverse engineer it. And to do that, you do what you're doing. You do what I'm doing. You do what others are doing in the Wing Chun system. You spar with it. You pressure test it, and then you will see what works and what doesn't work. Let's take one example in your videos. Another gentleman who does the kind of thing you do, actual real resistive Wing Chun, trying to make it relevant, not trying to fit square pegs into round holes, but actually finding in Wing Chun, okay, is there really a round hole for a round peg for a round hole? Is he looks at the footwork. He just released a video on the Wing Chun forum, straight away ridiculed by the traditionalists there. Who says they are? Maybe we are, mate. The traditionalists there, straight away ridiculed, saying, oh, but you're not using the correct Wing Chun. They said the same to you, the correct Wing Chun footwork. You're using kickboxing footwork. If it was real Wing Chun, combative Wing Chun, you would be, you know, at range, your Mun Sao, your Wu Sao, and trying to move around with the Ichi Kim Yang Ma. Because that's the way it's shown in the form. But what if that was never the founder's intention? Okay? And you can just see it when you try to, this is from an Ip Man movie, the way you fight, right? If it doesn't work, I mean, look at the Ichi Kim Yang Ma and the rooting stance. That doesn't, to me, look like it was ever meant to be used at kickboxing range for going in and out. And if you try to force it, square peg into the round hole, it's going to look, it's just not going to work for you. And because of these Kung Fu and Wing Chun guys going out there, getting knocked out by the likes of Xu Xiaodong, because they're trying to fit the square peg into the round hole and do it literally what the Sil Nim Tao and the other two forms show. I mean, they're proving through pressure testing it was never meant that way. Okay? But now try using that footwork when you're already at the bridge. Here's what the modern thinking is, Suki Wan and others. The modern thinking is it is a bridging system. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu doesn't have all the answers, but at the grapple and the wrestle, the ground fighting, it's got all the answers, doesn't it? What about French Savate, kickboxing, just Western boxing? It's got a lot of answers at boxing range. Not many answers once you get in the clinch. You can box in the pocket, but if you get taken down, what's good boxing to you? What good is boxing for you, okay? So Wing Chun is not going to be relevant at kickboxing range, and don't try to force that square peg into that round hole. And don't tell me it was ever meant to when the form itself, you can't establish that it was ever, the form is actually showing you the combative application. Now, just one more point on this, okay? When you are entering to a bridging system and looking, and this is what you do when you get close, use your kickboxing to get inside. Once you're inside, I mean, you tell me, Hoi, and look at Ray Tan's videos, some of my videos, okay? There's better out there than me. Okay, let me just tell you, okay? Are you finding application for Wing Chun at the bridge, the hand sensitivity one, that prelude to the grapple between the clinch, the grapple, and the boxer's pocket? Has it worked for you at all?
Yeah, so I'm going to add to that now, right? You've done a great job laying the groundwork, right? So people who maybe watch my videos or whatever, and they think that that I'm doing kickboxing with my Wing Chun, you guys are actually, like, people that think that, it shows that they understand very little or actually understand nothing about what's actually happening. People that do in fact train and spar and fight and whatever, they know what's going on, right? So I don't have to explain that. But anyway, let's just assume that you don't know what's going on, and I'll explain what's going on. To your point, okay, do you think, okay, from a fight standpoint, that is it logical for me to have my chin up in the air like this, my hands outstretched like this, my feet planted on the ground like this against a live resisting opponent that's moving around trying to knock me out, and I'm literally standing like this, and I'm inviting him to punch me in the chin? Do you think at any point in time in human history was that a good idea, right? It doesn't matter.
No.
Like people get caught up in all this bullshit about, oh, MMA, kickboxing, boxing, whatever. Dude, just go back freaking 300, 500 years ago. At what point in human history was standing there like a statue a good idea? Okay, go back to ancient times, thousands of years ago, when soldiers were on the battlefield fighting each other with spears and you know, swords and stuff like that. Do you think they just stood there and they're like, hey, stab me? No.
Exactly.
They would be moving, they would be alive, they would be using their techniques, they would be trying to stab you back. It's just a basic understanding of fighting. Now,
and may I?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, just a quick interjection there. That does, so you see, that doesn't mean you're modifying classical Wing Chun with kickboxing and modern arts. No, because if you think it's classical and traditional to have done this, like you said, 300 years ago, is that the way they were fighting? Let's look at the form, if you want to talk tradition, okay? What footwork is being expressed in, let's just talk about the Ip Man lineage for keep it simple. In those three forms, what footwork is being displayed? The most important part of the footwork in that whole sequence, right, is in Seal Lim Tao at the very beginning when you root your stance. You sink your knees before you do anything else. There's no bobbing around and moving or doing anything. So if you're going to claim it's traditional to be trying to move around like this and all of that, and I don't see it in the form.
I'll add
so
this.
Where's your authority coming from?
I'll add this, right? To me, because I've done other traditional martial arts and stuff like that, to me, it's pretty clear, right? To other people, maybe it's not very clear, right? To me, the stances are all training stances. They are stances to train your conditioning, footwork, things like that at a basic level. It doesn't mean that, hey, in a fight, you're going to stand like this. It's just just the basics, right? Like, for example, for the boxers and the Muay Thai guys out there, right? When you first go into your first boxing class or when you go into your first Muay Thai class, are you going to start dancing around like Floyd Mayweather? No, because that's highly advanced. That's highly advanced. You're not going to learn that kind of footwork on the first day. Guess what they do in their first boxing class or in their first kickboxing class? They do they do the same thing as your kung fu class or your karate class. They have a step forward with your left foot, step forward with my right, step forward with your left, okay? And then now we're going to step to the left, step to the left, step to the back, step to the back,
but
step to
now,
the right.
Hoi, when you use that kickboxing, okay, you kickbox, right, in a match. If you're jumping around and doing it in all this way that you're fluid, does anyone say, hey, that's not real kickboxing because it's not like my white belt beginners class where we go step to the left, step to the right? No, but then why the living fuck are Wing Chun people doing that?
I'll explain, right? So it goes back to the topic of, again, it's very laughable and funny to me because I know it, but they don't. So it's like me talking to a bunch of virgins. It's like a person that has dated or has had sex, and they're talking to a room full of virgins, literally. And these room full of virgins who have never dated and they never had sex are trying to give advice to the guy that has dated many times and has had sex many times. And they're like, oh, no, you shouldn't talk to a girl like that. That's not going to get you anywhere, blah, 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 blah. And then from the virgin's experience, all they've done is they've held hands with a girl. That's the best analogy. That's the best analogy I can use, because for the people that go out there and spar,
it's a colorful analogy.
Yeah. Again, I don't mean to be, inappropriate or disrespectful or anything like that, or you know what I mean. But that's the best analogy I can come up with, because people just don't understand. I'm like, if you go out there and you spar and you fight and you've fought so many times, dozens of times, you see through all the basic techniques already. You've moved past that. You've moved beyond that already.
Yes.
My style now is consistently changing. It's always evolving. You see me training 6 months ago, and I don't fight like I do 6 months ago already, because I've already had those week in, week out sparring sessions with people, and I've already was like, okay, you know what? I'll stop doing this. I'll start experimenting with this, and yada. So the style that you see me do now is very different than the style I did 2 years ago, even, right? So my point is, a real martial artist, okay? A real martial artist is alive. They are testing, they are training, they are validating their training, and they are making things work for them, because everybody's body type is different. Okay, some people might be shorter, some people might be stockier, some people might have more power but they have less speed, some people are very quick but don't have much power, etc., etc., so on and so forth. Now, if you're a martial artist, you know that you're gonna train everything that you can, hopefully, and then you're going to make it work for you. So it doesn't mean that if you do whatever, Hong Kong or Wing Chun or literally whatever style, okay, it doesn't mean your Muay Thai is going to look like my Muay Thai. It doesn't mean my boxing is going to look like your boxing. You might enjoy being in the pocket and power punching and trading with people. I maybe like to be more evasive and be more in and out. It's all preferences, right? So talking to these Kung Fu people, it's just I don't talk to them very seriously. I don't talk to them about like, oh, you know, the tradition was like this, the form was like this. I don't get into any of those kinds of conversations with those kinds of people, because it's utterly pointless, for me at least. I'm sure like for you or maybe for someone else, it's more meaningful.
I love it. Yeah, it is. I love the academics of it, but what surprises me, Hoi, is that they have this strong belief that what you're doing is modified Wing Chun, modified Kung Fu, and what they're doing is classical, traditional, and it's up to everybody else to follow their lead. They're not the ones pressure testing.
We just came out with the article, right? A blog post, right? The self-fulfilling death loop of self-defense, bracket, non-competitive martial arts, right? And it goes to this point, which is, it goes exactly to this point. There's a part in the blog, okay, if you haven't read it yet, you know, go check out our blog and read it. There's a line that says, when you learn traditional martial arts, quote unquote traditional, whatever you want to call traditional, okay, you are learning something that has been passed on to you by someone from some point in time. I want you to think about that, what that means. That means their information is only as good as what they got from that time. Okay, so if hypothetically 300 years ago, people did not have guns, they did not have the internet, they did not have videos, they did not have MMA and the UFC, you know, none of that stuff. They don't have access to all that information. Okay, they don't have access to nutrition. They don't have access to refrigerators. They don't have access to, modern sports science and nutrition and all that kind of stuff. They don't even weigh themselves. They don't even know how much they weighed or whatever, right? Back then, that time, they needed to make do with what they had, put it into a form, whatever it was, teach it to the next person. That person maybe added some things, maybe forgot a couple things. It's like a chef with a recipe. It's like, you got that core recipe, right? You got that core recipe. Okay, I know I need chicken. I know how to cook the chicken. I'm going to put some salt. I'm going to put some garlic. Maybe I don't like pepper. Maybe I'm allergic to pepper. I don't like pepper. I'm not going to put pepper in the chicken. Okay, now I have this recipe. I pass it on to the next guy. The next guy goes like, okay, well, this salt and garlic sucks. I'm going to make it into chili chicken. Okay. Then they pass on to the next guy. Next guy's like, I want it to be fried chicken, right? Nobody's wrong. It's just we all have our own interpretation. We all have our own interpretation of it. Now, for these clueless Kung Fu people, right? These clueless guys that, I don't know, again, I don't want to be mean to people. I don't want to be like offensive to people. I don't want to offend them. But basically, what I'm trying to say is they don't have a brain of their own. They can't think independently by themselves. So then they just think, well, whatever my Sifu tells me must be, you know, the 100%, you know, truth. And I'm just like, think about that for a second. Like, who taught your teacher? Who taught your teacher? Go back even further. Who taught your teacher's teacher? Go back some more. Eventually you realize that, hey, this thing's really old. Like, it got passed on through I don't know, decades, centuries, right? If you use your brain, and you just think critically, like certain principles are going to be there, obviously, right? Speed, distance,
Yes.
timing, control, whatever. All those things are principles that they stay constant throughout the times because the human body is going to be limited in its movement. It's only going to be, a set number of movements, okay? Because we have two hands and 2 feet, right? And one head and, one body, right? Obviously, we know that is the limit. So
That's it, man.
certain principles are always going to stay constant, of course, and most of the time it's like more or less it's going to be unchanging. However, the environment that you're in changes, okay? People
Yes.
people change throughout the times, okay? Nutrition changes, genetics change, okay? The people that you're fighting 70 years ago are not the same people that you're fighting today. People have watched videos on the internet. They've watched, 200 UFC events. People have sparred, 10,000 rounds. Okay. They're not going to give you the same reactions as that guy from, I don't know, 1900s China.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to give you that
Yes.
same reaction as the guy in 2022. Okay, it's not the same thing. So you guys keep talking about what is traditional, what is this, what is that. To me, that's more like a, trivia thing. That's more like a interesting thing to like maybe talk about and ponder
Yes.
about. But I don't waste my time talking about that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Because
Yes.
when these kung fu, experts talk to me about what's this and what's that, I'm like, I'm not interested. I'm interested in if your kung fu is any good. Number one, is your kung fu any good? Number two, can you actually use your kung fu, right? Just because your kung fu is good doesn't mean you can use it. Okay, some people might have like quote unquote high level skills, like their chi sao might be really good, or their punches might be really really fast. It's like, okay, you have kung fu skills, sure, but the other factor is, can you use your kung fu? And most people, it's like, well, I can't use my kung fu because I never spar, I never test it, I never actually go out and fight with people. That's where I laugh. That's where I sit back. I'm like, I just laugh because I'm like, you have all these other guys that do other martial arts now, like kickboxing, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, whatever. These guys practice day in and day out, and they spar day in and day out, and they know that their martial arts works. They don't have to speculate. They don't have to like think about, 100 years ago, Gracie did this move, and that's what he meant by the armbar. It's like, no, that's not what he meant, because nowadays you see 1,000 people doing the armbar, and they're doing it at a high level, and they know the modern armbar is a lot better than the old armbar from 100 years ago, because they've been doing it for 100 years. Whereas these kung fu guys, they never, modernize whatever the hell they're doing. They don't know they don't know that whatever they're doing is hundreds of years old, and they're not adapting, right? So anyway, you go on.
Exactly. No, they don't. They need to do, 20 years ago, go to a jiu-jitsu class in the UK, completely different what they do now in a jiu-jitsu class. Because when you pressure test against living resistance, you talk about in Jeet Kune Do, one of the pioneers of MMA along with the Gracies was Matthew Thornton. He went on to found Straight Blast Gym. And of course, look who came out of that. You look at Kavanagh and Conor McGregor. And I found out about that by watching Conor McGregor fighting and thinking, damn, that looks like Jeet Kune Do. That looks like Bruce Lee's movements. Turns out Matthew Thornton, who founded that gym, was a Jeet Kune Do guy, came from down in Inosanto, the Inosanto Academy. He learned all of that stuff. And he talked about his theory, the triangle of aliveness. Okay, you need to have energy, motion, timing. You just need living resistance. Okay, so jiu-jitsu implements that training. Now they get closer to the combative form of the martial art. Martial arts is good for lots of things. Okay, it's great doing, if you just use martial arts for combat, you won't last into your 60s. You'll burn out. But when the time comes to retire, what are you going to do with your martial arts now if you can't fight? You'll find ways to do it, like the Tai Chi Chuan, the Wudan styles, ways which will, as self-defense, it'll defend your life by giving you health and longevity. You can reach the age of 100, okay? But if we're talking about not mistaking the wood for the trees, we're talking about combative Wing Chun. The revolution that needs to happen is what happened with karate. And what I like is what you see now with karate. You see karate, combat karate, okay, an offshoot of MMA. Now, here's the question, Hoi. Is there a combat Wing Chun that we're all waiting to discover and can actually bring something new to mixed martial arts, can bring something new and change the game up a bit for professional fighters in whether it's UFC, we have EFC, Extreme Fighting Championships here in Africa, there's Bellator, there's lots, okay? Is there anything in Wing Chun? We're only going to find out if we pressure test, we do our chi sao, we do lots of drills in set parameters. You don't have to just go punch each other in the face. I mean, look at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsuers. They don't kick each other and elbow each other in the face. They just grapple. Resistance in a set parameter is still a lot. Can you do resistance in the set parameter of just working at bridging hands? Okay, but as long as resistance is real, the guy really doesn't want you to pull off your technique to him. Now, if we do that, will we do what the jiu-jiteros did and reverse engineer in a matter of a few years what combative Wing Chun was always supposed to be? And will we find something in there that's going to be of use to mixed martial artists today, to prize fighters? I believe so. Watching your videos and see how you get to the chi sao and you find things there which are very unique, but none of those guys who just spend their whole lives in theory will ever know and understand. Talk about the bong sao. Okay, they're trying to block the bong sao. What if it was never meant for that way? You'll never know until you actually do it against resistance. And you may discover, wait a second, this is working in a different capacity we never knew before. Experiment, pressure test it. And I believe that you're even, this is my theory and something I'm going to be working on. I am working at the moment with local MMA clubs here in Southern Africa, that we don't, for example, have an answer right now to the Dagestani, the Soviet Russian Sambo, combat Sambo, okay? Which has even taken the BJJ world by storm, all right? They certainly didn't have an answer for it in the lightweight division of the UFC, okay? And thinking up to this point seems to have been, let's just stuff that takedown as best we can so that we can get ourselves to the fence and get propped up against the cage. And then from there, we can work our way out of it to buy time out of the 5-minute round, okay? Because the time limit is what's saving us. What if, I'm thinking, in Wing Chun, in Chi Sao, in resisted bridging hand work, there is an answer to not just stuffing and delaying the inevitable of the Dagestani Sambo, but of stopping it altogether and returning to the kickboxing range, returning to the Muay Thai range with the clinch and the elbows. What if there's an answer there, but we won't know until we get to the point where Wing Chun schools today are resistive testing their Chi Sao. What I would like to see for Wing Chun is no more schools where Chi Sao is done passively, the Pun Sao roll, okay? And there's many English translations for Pun Sao. Going back to Suki Wan, he says the interrogating hand, interrogating someone. Where are you going with this? Now, the Pun Sao is fine. It's a set parameter you work in. Here's the question. Are you willing to stop practicing that Chi Sao roll passively and practicing your traps from there passively? Only do it resistively. And this is something in my school now, I've made law. Anyone now who does Chi Sao in my class, they must resist the bridge. And it's sort of our credo here at my academy, resist the bridge. Now, if we do that long enough, are we going to produce a skill set that has direct application at high levels, not just the amateurs, but high levels of mixed martial arts? Is it going to give us something to count? Because, you know, every generation in MMA, every 5 years, something comes along. There was no answer for Conor McGregor's tactics for a while. We saw that answer with people like Nurmagomedov, okay? When's it going, and now you've got Nurmagomedov's protege coming up, Islam, and they all expect him to come in and just take the title, do the same thing Nurmagomedov did. What if now people can evolve a new strategy? People are looking right now, they're training in MMA gyms around the world. How do we combat? How do we counter this shit? You know? My theory is the answer may be in Wing Chun bridging hands, but we're not going to find out until we start practicing it resistively. Because what I've seen in MMA is when you get to the clinch, you go from your boxing range and you enter that pocket, is people skip the bridge. They don't know what to do at the bridge. They don't bother trapping it because again, they believe trapping is like you see in Seal and Tao. Okay, which, what if it's not? What if it's about connecting to the bridge and then manipulating your opponent, reading him towards his center through his spine? Now, I won't get esoteric on you there. There's a lot of academic talk about that. There's books full of it. What I'm saying is, let's resistively practice Chi Sao for a while, like you've done some of. I've seen you doing that in videos, and it looks good. And I've seen what Ray Tan's doing, okay? More Wing Chun schools need to start doing this, and more MMA fighters I would encourage to learn a bit of Wing Chun, get some Chi Sao going. You can learn it in a few lessons and then just take it straight with your training partner into your MMA gym on the mat and start really looking at, not because, you know, Sambo wrestlers, they need to get hold of you. They need that. They just need to get hold of, Nurmagomedov's at a level. He just needs to get hold of your ankle, and now he's got your center. All right. The whole point of Chi Sao is not to let your opponent find your center the whole time. That's what soft hands, reading hands, Chi Sao hands means, is you detach your elbow, your shoulder, the theory goes from everything, and you're elusive, and you're receding on entry, entering on receding, contracting, expanding, all the usual aphorisms. But people are simply not finding out pressure testing.
I can try and give you some extra input or insight on this. I know what you're saying. I know where you're going with it. I'll just kind of tell you through my own experiences and also the things that I've seen, right? If you're trying to stop if you're trying to stop like a wrestler from wrestling you or a grappler from grappling you, it's kind of like it goes back to like UFC 1, that kind of thing. You can't figure out how to stop what they're doing unless you also train that and you know what they're trying to do. So the solution is actually just the solution is right in front of your faces. It's right in front of our noses or right under our noses. It's just other people want to make it more complicated. They want to complicate the situation. They want to be the one that says, I discovered something in Hong Kong and, I can do it like this, or I discovered something in Wing Chun, I can do it like this. Okay, I get it. It sounds nice. It sounds cool. I'm not saying it's completely valueless. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, I've discovered certain things in Wing Chun that I'm using, in my sparring and whatever, right? I'm testing things out, right? And just so, we're clear, I don't think I'm good at T-cell or anything like that. I haven't trained that much T-cell, if I were to be honest with you. I'm only starting to, pick up some of the intricacies of T-cell, right? But with that said, I'm very reality-based. What that means is I don't stand there and do this and expect this to somehow, hurt you or whatever. Like, this is just a phase, a split-second phase for me to get into the clinch and control you, pull your head down, take you down, whatever, right? So I think the answer is already there. It's just people try to complicate the situation. They're like, they're just trying to make it too complicated, right? So really the reality is learn how to clinch, right? Because people who train martial arts, such as myself, like they would wonder, hey, Wing Chun does all this, close range, short range bridging, trapping stuff. Why don't Wing Chun guys ever learn how to clinch? For me, the answer is obvious. To Wing Chun people or Kung Fu people, they have no idea what they're talking about. For me, it's like, yeah, you should actually learn to clinch fight people because this is the exact same range we're talking about. Nobody's going to stand there and touch your hands like this in a real fight. So this is just a transitional, phase for you to get to the clinch and for you to get out of the clinch. So you look at guys like Randy Couture, for example, Greco-Roman wrestling. This is all tie-ups and, bicep tie-ups and Russian tie-ups and all that kind of stuff. That is actually the Wing Chun applied, right? If you want to call it that, because they're actually using their hand trapping to trap your neck and they're using their hand trapping to wrestle you and take you down. So that really should be part of the Wing Chun. And if you want to even expand on that, Greco-Roman wrestling, Mongolian wrestling, Shuai Jiao, Chinese wrestling, all of that is grips and hand fighting. Why shouldn't that be part of the Wing Chun? it should be part of the Wing Chun because no one, like I said, no one's going to stand there like this and let you just tee off on their face like this, like a wooden dummy. Okay. So, really, realistically, okay, if you're talking about, hey, what's the future? What's the forward way of thinking, right? It should be, it's clear to me, but not very clear to other people. But it's clear to me that it should be Chinese boxing, which is your Wing Chun, your Hong Kong, your whatever, right? All these kinds of strikes. And once you get into this clinch range, it's your Mongolian wrestling, your Chinese wrestling, your whatever, Greco-Roman wrestling, your freestyle wrestling, all that. And you should be practicing that like synergetically. Like they should all be practiced as if it was one whole thing so that you don't get into this mode where, okay, I'm going to do this and, you know, you're going to do that. So I'm going to do this. And then you're going to do this and I'm going to do that. Like that's all dead training. It's not alive, right? No one's going to stand there and be like, okay, I'm going to punch you like this. Stop me like this. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to punch you like this. Stop me like that. Like that's going backwards. That's like, okay, Aikido. That's like, I don't know, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s Aikido. Like, okay, people fought like that back in that time because they were wielding swords and you had to like stop their wrist from drawing the sword to kill you. People don't have swords these days. They're not going to give you their hand and then you wrist lock them and all that. Like, come on, people pay attention, you know? People have been grappling for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years now. You know, wrist locks don't work in a standing position or whatever. You need to put them into a certain position so that they can't move their elbow, they can't move their shoulder, then you can wrist lock them, right? So it's the same thing with the Wing Chun, right? Nobody's going to stand in front of you, let you do their chi sao on you, right? You have to do it with resistance, like you said. Anyway, the answer is already there, right? It's just people want to avoid, you know, the easy answer. You know, people want to avoid the unsexy answer. They don't want to be like, well, yeah, I'll train that too. I guess I have to train that too. You know, basically, you know, bash their ego down a couple levels and be like, yeah, you know what? I have to train that as well. I have to train that as well. Because in order for me to understand where my trapping goes to the next level, I have to stop whatever this guy's doing, right? The answer is obvious. But people don't want to do that because, first of all, their egos, right? They might be old, right? They're 40 and above, right? And they're like, no, I don't want to learn wrestling, you know, or they're like, no, I don't want to learn grappling because of their ego. They're like, no, my style's the best. I don't have to learn that. Or they are a teacher, you know? So then they're like, no. You know, that's not how we do it in this school. You know, you have to do it this way and all this kinds of stuff. So I'm not going to talk about lineages and teacher names and stuff like that. I'm really not interested in that kind of argument. Like I see it for what it is, clear as day. Other people will be like, oh no, you know, in this lineage we do it this way, in that lineage we do it that way. For me, it's clear as day. Like I don't care about your lineage. I don't care about who your teacher is, whatever. Can you use it or not? Because if you can't use it, you're just fucking pretending.
Absolutely. Combatively, you are. So when I talk about a theory, just to clarify, it's a theory that maybe there's something in the Wing Chun bridging work that could counter something.
I'm sure there is.
It's a flighty idea. I give you that.
I'm sure there is.
You see,
I'm not an expert.
But the thing is, we're only going to find out when my message is this. We mustn't be afraid of sparring. It's a lot of fun. Light contact sparring is a lot of fun, okay? And when you use your chi sao resistively, it is a lot of fun and it's very fulfilling, okay? Now, if every Wing Chun is the most practiced, apparently, I've read this somewhere, you know, who knows, you know, statisticians and stats, but anyway, Wing Chun is a very popular martial art practiced worldwide, okay? As far as Chinese martial arts go, the Kung Fu systems, it's maybe the most widely practiced in the world. Every single Wing Chun school stopped doing Poon Sao and Chi Sao passively, not stop doing it and say, oh, forget this, let's just work on our Sambo, our Muay Thai, our Jiu-Jitsu, but just started doing that stuff, the Chi Sao, resistively, okay, alive, not dead. how long do you think it would take those millions of experiments going on every day before we come to a form of, as Bruce Lee says, hacking away at the inessentials, until we come to a form of Wing Chun that actually, is fucking banging?
I'll add to that. So this goes back to our blog article, right? The blog article, just click on it, read it if you don't haven't seen it. We've already proposed a solution, right, in the blog article, right? The reason why people don't come together and start refining what they're doing is because they don't have a platform to refine. Okay, you're in your school,
yes,
you're doing your thing, I'm in my school, I'm doing my thing. People are making discoveries on their own in their own little silos, and then they're not going to tell each other because, oh, that's from our lineage, or that's from your lineage. Like, we're not going to share that secret. Like, it's stupid, it dies off, right? But what people do in jiu-jitsu and what people do in Muay Thai is they go out there, they have a platform to compete. And then once they compete, they see, oh, that guy did that. We're going to copy that and we're going to try and beat him next time, right? So then it's like a never-ending improvement, right? It keeps getting improved, right?
Yes.
The level goes higher and higher and higher. So let's talk about the future. Let's not talk about the past. Let's talk about the future. How do people...
That is natural selection.
Right, natural selection. So how do people actually improve their Kung Fu? Let's talk about the future, okay? I'm not a head of any Kung Fu organization. I'm not some kind of lineage carrier. I'm not some kind of master or whatever, right? But if I was one of those guys, I would probably figure out some kind of, international standard, some kind of international competition standard, right? Just like BJJ has, IBJJF and ADCC and all those kinds of stuff, right? Figure out a competition format that makes sense. I'm not saying do T-cell competitions, because I'm not really sold on the T-cell competitions. I think it's kind of like a cheap, what's the word to use? It's a very elementary kind of like game. I don't really see that as like real fighting, right? So I'm not going to comment about T-cell competitions. I wouldn't be interested in T-cell competitions, to be honest with you, because I already punch people and kick people in the face, right? So I think but at the same time, there's got to be some kind of middle ground, right? So I'm thinking, in my head, at least, there's got to be like sort of like two levels, okay? So one level is sort of like the basic level where there's some light equipment, some light protective equipment. You can have light to medium contact. Anything goes. It's not full contact. It's not meant to be like, okay, combat karate or something like that where you knock people out. Light, medium contact, amateur, sanda rules. Basically anything goes, right? Any kind of kung fu you want to do, you could do it, right? Hong Kong, whatever, Mantis, whatever. Just go out and test it, right? It's gonna look like, Lei Tai fights. It's gonna look like Sanda fights, right? But just not full contact, not crazy. Let people test their shit, right? Then you're gonna start seeing guys, throwing, strong straight blast punches. You're gonna see guys doing, sek wai. You're gonna see guys doing, lin wan kun and then chain punches and stuff like that. Knock people back 10 feet and knock them off the Lei Tai or the Lei Tai, right? You're going to start seeing some of that, right? And then if you want to take it to the next level, you're like, okay, now you glove up, shin guard up, and you do just full contact sanda, okay? So it already exists. It's already there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already there. People just have to accept that hey, that is Kung Fu. You should be punching and kicking each other full contact, right? But at the same time, if you want to keep the traditional Chinese martial arts alive, you don't want to take everything away from it, right? Then you got to have that kind of like that middle ground where you kind of let those people, whatever they're studying, Mantis, Hong Kun, Xing Yi Quan, Ba Gao Quan, Ba Ji Quan, whatever, Tai Chi Quan, whatever, you got to give them that middle ground where, let's say, for example, it's Kyokushin karate, for example. You let those karate guys go in there. They're still doing karate. It's still uniquely karate flavor. You're not asking them to wrestle. You're not asking them to learn jiu-jitsu. You're not asking them to learn judo or anything like that. but you're giving them a platform to show it off. So then they know,
Yes.
oh, who's the best karate guy or who's the best kung fu guy, because they have a platform. Once they have that platform with as minimal rules as you possibly can do without it becoming MMA, of course. But like trips and throws allowed, but no ground stuff. Okay, for example, right? So it's gonna look kind of like bare knuckle Loi Tai fighting, right? It's kind of look like that bare knuckle Loi Tai fighting where people are gonna be punching and kicking each other, maybe not full contact, like light to medium contact, but they could still work their skills. Once people do that, they're gonna start seeing exactly what works, what doesn't. They should stop drilling certain things that are maybe like just traditional, I guess, right? Like maybe they used to train, maybe they used to drill things in jiu-jitsu 100 years ago that we just don't know about because we moved so past beyond that we no longer drill those things, right? So it just needs to have a natural, like you said, natural selection effect. But the natural selection is not going to happen unless you give people a platform. And I don't have a solution for that because I'm not some kind of ultra rich businessman who
but may I just make a suggestion though?
Yeah.
So talk about the future of Wing Chun. What you're saying, absolutely, that's what it needs to get to. You need that platform, and you need people to have an environment where they feel safe to practice their art, okay? And not feel like, well, it's not really for us, we stay away from it, okay? You've got two camps, they're not coming together to meet in the middle. So when you talk about platforms, I think we can have those platforms at the local level. I think every single Wing Chun school, even if it's a small little basement somewhere, it's just you and your mate from down the road, okay, can start doing their Chi Sao resistively. We can start there. Every single school of Wing Chun, I just want to put out the message that they don't need to be afraid of it. They don't need to listen to these people on these traditional Wing Chun forums telling them, oh, Wing Chun this and Wing Chun that and traditional this and modern that. Just ignore them. There's nothing wrong with you just changing the way you do your Chi Sao and your bridging work. Do it resistively, please. There's millions of experiments going on every day where people feel empowered, young people, old people, doesn't matter whether they're experiencing Wing Chun or not. Start having a little bit of fun with resistance and sparring. Only do your Chi Sao resistively. You may not like it at first because you can't pull off the same traps and techniques you're used to, but you may start finding out, hacking away at the inessentials and finding out where Chi Sao works, where it doesn't work, and you will get closer to feeling confident with your Wing Chun, feeling combative. You start doing that, these millions of schools, millions of experiments going on every day, natural selection. It's going to get to the point more people become confident, more people speak out, and then you're going to get, when that confidence of society rises as the zeitgeist changes, very naturally, organically, Hoi, a platform like you're talking about will spring up in this neighborhood, in this city in America, in this town in England. People will come together and say, you know what, we've been doing this resistive Wing Chun. It's not that scary. And actually, we've come up with some pretty cool stuff out of it. You know what, let's get the local clubs together. Let's just throw a little event and do some competition. That's how it will grow grassroots. And when that happens, you'll see a paradigm shift. Now, if there really is nothing to the bridging hands resistively, and it can't really add anything to modern MMA and true full contact where anything goes and you're fully alive, then fine. But at least you tried and you figured out, does Wing Chun have relevance in the modern day? I believe it does, and I'll continue to train my Chi Sao resistively. And other Wing Chun schools shouldn't be afraid to either. There's nothing wrong with it. And anyone who tells you, well, you have to modify it with kickboxing, sorry, you have to mod other schools which try to fearmonger, oh, if you spar with it, if you resist with it, it's just going to end up being MMA and kickboxing. It's fearmongering. Who says it has to be that way? And who says that combative Wing Chun you start developing won't be closer to what the traditionalists, the founders meant, because they did in combative context.
I'll make a comment on that.
And that's the only message I have to say.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. I'll try to wrap this up because we're nearing the end of our time now. So I'll say it like this, right? We released blog articles in the past as well, right? people are so hell-bent on the idea that, oh, well, it doesn't look like Wing Chun or it doesn't look like Kung Fu. Like, these people are not paying attention, and they're not freaking paying attention, okay? If you look at the development of other martial arts, if you look at boxing 100 years ago, does boxing look anything like modern boxing today? Like traditional boxing, does that look anything like modern boxing today? No. Old boxing was like this, right? So they evolved, right? They figured some things out, right? And they don't box like this anymore, right? Old Muay Thai looked a lot more like flaily, like they were flailing their arms or flailing their kicks around, right? It looked a lot more unrefined than today's Muay Thai, which is very, very tight guard, very efficient, right? These Kung Fu people are like still trying to think of stuff that's like from 100 years ago. And they're like, well, you know, if it doesn't look like this, it's not Kung Fu. Like, people are just stupid. Like, that's it. That's all I'll say, is that people are so focused on how something looks rather than how something functions. And they don't realize that even karate evolved over the last 60 years, right? It used to look like this.
Very much so.
Right? It used to look like this. Now people are bouncing around, popping in and out, bang, 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 bang. Now karate looks different, right? So
yes,
who is it that these people are trying to say, oh, Kung Fu should look like this, Kung Fu shouldn't look like this, or Kung Fu should be done this way and shouldn't be done this way?
They're nobody.
It's a stupid
They're nobodies, Hoi. They're nobodies.
It's a stupid argument because
they're nobodies. It's just,
there's no reality to whatever that they're saying. The truth for me is very easy to see. It's, if you can use it and it works in fighting, then it's a martial art. Then you're actually practicing what you say that you're practicing. If it doesn't work against live resisting opponents, then you're just basically doing fantasy, role-playing stuff. You're just role-playing. You're just imagining that you're in a Kung Fu movie and whatever. So yeah, it looks like, our friend Howard there lost his power, but that's okay. So that's basically everything that we wanted to say out of this episode already. So you let us know in the comments what you think, how we can help change, Kung Fu, how we can help push it forward, right? Is it a lost cause? Is there any value left in it? All these kinds of things. For me, I think there's plenty of value in it as I continue to train the styles, as I continue to learn the styles for what they really are. I see, a lot of potential, a lot of qualities and essences in the style, right? In many of these styles. And as you follow, our Dynasty MMA channel, we will reveal more and more to you as the years go on. But, leave us some comments in the comment section. Let us know what you think, right? And that's it. That's a wrap for this one. So thank you for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.
Hi Hoi, sorry about the power cut there mate, we are in Africa after all, it happens, lights just came back on. Wonderful having that interview with you, agree with everything you're saying. Let's just resist the bridge, let's do Chi Sao non-compliantly for once, nothing to be scared of, and we'll learn a lot more about what Kung Fu meant combatively. Let's reverse engineer and find the true meaning of combative Wing Chun. And don't get scared about what people say more traditional, this and that. Totally agree with you. And everyone, subscribe to Dynasty MMA, subscribe to Hoi's channel. I'm learning a lot from him. You'll learn a lot too, and watch his sparring videos. And keep it up, Hoi. Make Kung Fu great again. Bye guys, happy holidays.